Welcome to Knowledgeable Aging. I'm your host, Jason Kotar. Joining us today to talk about active aging with Pilates is Gia Calhoun. Gia is a Pilates teacher based in Los Angeles, California, who has been teaching Pilates since 2007. She has been working for Pilates Anytime since 2013 and is the vice president. Gia taught Pilates at the Pilates Center of Pittsburgh and West LA Pilates, where she taught there for 5 years before transitioning to a full-time employee of Pilates Anytime. How are you doing today, Gia?
Doing great. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, for those that are joining us for the live webinar, if you have any questions, type your questions into the control panel on the right-hand side, and we'll do everything in our power to get your questions answered. So Gia, I'd like to get started. What is Pilates?
Pilates is a full body exercise. It was designed by a man named Joseph Pilates. He was a German immigrant, and he came here, I think, in the 30s, and he called it contrology. So it's about the art of control and controlling your mind, your body, your spirit, and kind of bringing everything together. So you work your full body. A lot of exercise tends to focus on one particular muscle group, or you try to burn out the muscle group, but it's about bringing balance to your body through breath, precision, control, centering, and flow.
Yeah. So let's focus on the physical benefits. What are the physical benefits of Pilates?
So there's a lot of benefits. So the great thing about Pilates is that you can use it to meet you where you're at. If you needed something more challenging, you can really push yourself. If you needed modifications, you can dial it back. A lot of times it's used for physical therapy. So it's very rehabilitative, and it's really great for injury prevention and just muscular balance overall. I find that it strengthens you, increases your mobility, it improves posture. All the breathing exercises can help improve your lung capacity, and it just makes you feel good.
Yeah. What about the mental benefits?
Mentally, because you are doing different combinations of exercises, so it challenges your coordination a lot, and especially as we get older, we want to challenge our neuroplasticity. So it kind of makes you think, and doing new movements is always great for keeping your mind sharp. So generally with Pilates, you're learning new different combinations, trying to change things up a little bit, and you're always focusing on what you're doing. So you have that deep concentration. I personally find it very meditative because I can focus on what I'm doing rather than thinking about all the other things that I have to do.
Yeah.
And overall, it just kind of can clear your head, but then also challenge your brain in a new way.
Yeah. As far as equipment, what type of equipment is needed for Pilates?
You actually don't need any equipment. Traditionally, in a Pilates studio, you'll see pieces of apparatus called the reformer, Cadillac, a wonder chair, tower. There's many different things, but you can also do it on the mat. And the mat is actually the hardest way to do Pilates because the equipment will help you, and it'll kind of put you in the right position so that your alignment is good and that you're not kind of cheating into the movement. But if you're unable to get onto the floor, there's also alternatives where you could do it seated in a chair. You can do the upper body movements. There's many possibilities for Pilates, and you don't need the equipment to do it, even though it is really fun to use it.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the benefits of going to a studio versus maybe online. Can you discuss maybe the pros and cons of both of those for somebody that's a Pilates, for somebody that's doing Pilates?
Yeah, some of the benefits, because I've done both too, and I've taught at studios and then I teach online. So they're both great for different reasons. I find going to a studio, especially if you're doing one-on-one sessions, is really great because that session is tailor-made for you and everything you need. And you get to use the full system of apparatus, which can be very beneficial. And certain pieces of apparatus can be very rehabilitative, like the Cadillac, for instance. It's a higher table. So if you had trouble getting down to the floor on the mat, you can just kind of sit on this higher table and you don't have to challenge your joints in any way. It also is just nice to get the tactile feedback. I know right now with the pandemic, it's a little bit different. People aren't touching their clients as much, but in a normal setting, you do get assistance from your teacher with physical cues, and you can just make sure that you're doing everything correctly because the teacher has their eyes on you. In a online setting, It's nice because you can do it around your own schedule. You can find teachers online or classes online that you particularly like, and then you can kind of repeat those or find new classes from that same teacher if they keep providing those. So it's a nice way to make it your own and not have someone telling you what to do, and you can do it on your own time. There
Yeah.
is a bit of a challenge online though, because sometimes if you have kids or pets, like I have struggle with my dog. I can't really do a mat class because as soon as I'm on the mat, she thinks it's hers and then she's there.
Yeah.
So there's a
She's
bit of a struggle
yeah,
sometimes.
you're at her level then, right? She's like, "Ooh, let's play."
Exactly. Exactly.
So if somebody's going to a studio, I guess one of the benefits, I assume one of the benefits, Gia, is you can talk to the instructor, maybe
Mhm.
explain maybe some injuries you have, or so you can kind of, like you said, tailor it to something that kind
Mhm.
of benefits you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's Pilates is very safe. There's no impact on the joints, especially on the equipment. We use springs for resistance instead of weights. So even on the mat, you're still trying to find that internal resistance even without using the springs, but it's very safe. And with the teacher, they're there to spot you if you need it. So it's even safer as opposed to when you're at home. People do have equipment at home sometimes, but usually it's more common to see people doing mat work, which again is more challenging. So that's where you see more injuries sometimes if they're not sure what they're doing. So I usually recommend people start at a studio, and then once they're familiar with it, then they can move
Yeah.
to at home to supplement. It's a nice complement to each other.
So should somebody speak with their doctor before starting Pilates? Do you recommend that?
Yes, definitely. It's just good for any new exercise practice to consult with your doctor to make sure that it's right for you. Um, Anytime you start something new, you want to make sure that it's safe. And while Pilates is safe and you could do it every day, there still could be some kind of contraindication that you need to know about that you would have to tell the instructor so that way they know what to do. Say if someone had osteoporosis, and usually flexion, which is rounding your spine, is contraindicated. So if there's a lot of flexion in a lot of Pilates movements because it focuses a lot on core work. So if the teacher didn't know that you had osteoporosis and they started giving you flexion, that would be very dangerous for you. So you do want to check with your doctor to make sure that you know anything that you need to tell the instructor before you start.
You had mentioned rehab or physical therapy, Gia.
Mhm.
How is Pilates or can Pilates be used in conjunction with that?
That's a great question. I actually used to work at a physical therapy office. And so what they would do is the patients would go there for physical therapy. And then once they kind of graduated to that, they would stay on for Pilates. So it was a nice complement where physical therapy tends to treat the specific area that needs to be focused on. And then Pilates kind of works the whole body. So while you are kind of helping that one area, you are strengthening everything else as well. And because it's so gentle, especially on the joints, it's not going to cause any additional injury. So you're going to strengthen those little muscles instead of just the major muscle groups. I personally started Pilates from an injury. So I had a hip injury from dance, and I did go to physical therapy for it, but then I found Pilates worked better because it kept me moving and kind of kept the joint working, like lubricated, so that it wasn't getting stuck and the scar tissue was getting broken up. So that way I could kind of keep the mobility in my hip.
Yeah. Is there an age limit, Gia, to Pilates?
No, there's no age limit. I've taught people as young as 13, and I've seen people actually even 11. I had a client who was 11, and I've taught people all the way up into their 90s. There really is no age limit because, again, you can tailor the workout to any need. I started when I was 15, and I plan to keep doing it. I feel like Pilates keeps you young and keeps you active and mobile. One of the things that is great about it is it's not trying to make you good at Pilates. You use Pilates to make you better at other things or so that you can use it for your everyday life. Like if you needed to bend down to pick up your groceries or reach up if you're traveling to put your bag away, it's just good to kind of keep your strength and mobility so that you can do other activities. So that's what Pilates is kind of meant for.
Yeah. I want to shift to the aging population, Gia. How does Pilates help the aging population? When I think of the aging population and some of the physical issues they may have with regards to balance and coordination,
Mhm.
posture. How does Pilates benefit them?
It works on all of those. So for posture, Pilates does focus a lot on your abdominal muscles. You're kind of using your abdominals in every exercise. And I know a lot of people assume posture is more your shoulders and your back, but it actually starts from your abdominals. So if you can pull your abs in and stand up taller, that's going to make your spine straighter. We work a lot of the upper back muscles and the shoulder girdles to try to keep the chest open and to prevent, it's called kyphosis, the kind of rounding and hunched position. So we work a lot of those muscles to try to counter that in Pilates. So it's really great for posture, and it just makes you stand taller. With balance, again, balance starts from your core. So if you have a strong core and center, you're going to be more balanced. We do a lot of balancing exercises. I've done a lot with different aging people who we stand with one foot crossed in front of the other sometimes to narrow your center of gravity. So that way it kind of challenges your balance. Sometimes we'll do it on a mat. Usually Pilates mats are a bit squishier than yoga mats. So that challenges your balance, and just finding your balance is really strengthening as well. Like a lot of people will have a little bit of a wobbly sensation in their ankles, but that's actually your body kind of finding where your center of gravity is and then strengthening those little muscles around the joint to kind of support it. And then with like fall prevention, a lot of times people fall because their feet lose their mobility. So we spend a lot of time working the flexibility of the feet and keeping your feet active. So that way people walk better, and then they're less likely to fall. We also kind of can work on reaction time. So that way, if you do happen to fall, you know how to fall. So there's a lot of benefits for the aging population in that way.
Can you explain when you say core, what does the core mean?
The core is, most people think of it as your abdominals, but it's really the whole center of your body, the torso. So it's your abdominals, your back, your glutes, your hips. That's kind of the core. Sometimes you'll hear in Pilates, it's called the powerhouse. That's where all your power comes from.
Okay. Now, are there certain exercises or Pilates exercises for our aging population that's specifically for them?
Yeah, there's definitely some exercises that are specifically for them. Sometimes if it's someone who's a little bit more frail, you'll see it called as pre-Pilates, and you can do that in a chair, usually using little props. I've taught at different nursing homes occasionally where most people were chair bound, so we would do a lot of upper body movements. You can do little leg lifts where you try not to use your quad or your hip to lift the leg, but you kind of think of pulling your abdominals in and then lifting your legs up, and that'll kind of activate your core muscles. And even just breathing is a great way to activate your core, because in Pilates we tend to do a deeper breathing where you breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, but the idea is to do it from your belly and not from your chest, because I believe, I'm not a breathing expert, but I believe that when you breathe from the chest, it tends to signal to your body danger and hyperventilating, whereas when you breathe from the belly, it's a little bit more relaxing and calming, but it also activates those muscles.
So you had mentioned pre-Pilates. Are there other, so if we have somebody that's an older individual and that's looking to get involved in
Mhm.
Pilates, what does the beginning look like for them? Is it like we sit down and talk about where they're looking to focus, or is it like, hey, we're going to start here?
Yeah, generally you'd start with talking to the teacher. They have you fill out some kind of form where you'd say what maybe injuries or conditions that you might be working with, so that they know what they can start to develop a plan for you. And then the first session is usually some kind of assessment where they're looking at your posture, watching how you walk, and just seeing where your habits go. And then there's usually some gentle movement. Depending on how that goes, they may intensify that movement or they may pull back, but usually the first session is a little bit more on the gentle side. So that way you can kind of just see how the person is moving and see what you maybe want to focus on to kind of improve their movement patterns. And then from there, you start to progress based on what their goals are.
So if somebody's is in an in studio or they're doing it online, is there a
Mhm.
duration as far as minutes that is recommended for somebody that's practicing Pilates?
Usually, in-person classes or privates tend to be around 50 to 55 minutes. It's a great time to give you a little bit of breaks in between each exercise, and especially if you are new, the teacher's going to be explaining a lot to you because, again, there's a lot of coordination and sometimes that doesn't come naturally to people, so it can take a little bit more time to get the movement. And because you are focusing so much on what you're doing, it's a mind-body exercise, it can be a little bit tiring, more than you would think. So it's challenging your mind and your body. So usually 50, 55 minutes is really good for that. But online, usually people who do the online sessions are a little bit busier. So usually you'll see like 30 to 45-minute classes. And I'd say at least 30 minutes is ideal. A little bit longer is better though.
So I want to stay with the work that you did in nursing homes, and you had mentioned the pre-Pilates. So what does that look like? Is it a continual once a week? Where are you going with it as far as the expectation with these individuals?
For those, I actually kind of partnered with my mother, who I know you'll be interviewing soon. But we would do a kind of tag team workshop. I think we did them every few months with these particular groups, but I would do a little bit of a movement segment with them, and usually it was focused on the hands and then in the upper body, and then she would do an art project with them or some kind of activity where they needed to focus. So we'd kind of warm up their mind and their body, and then they'd use what we did to kind of do an art project. So that was kind of fun. But I'd say a lot of nursing homes do have exercise or conditioning programs, and I'd say at least once a week is ideal. Most clients I would recommend 2 to 3 times a week, because once a week is what we say is for maintenance. But then when you exercise more than that, it's actually going to make any kind of change that you need.
So Gia, do you need to be at a certain skill level to see the benefits of Pilates?
No, you don't have to be at any skill level. Just moving will give you benefit. And I know a lot of us tend to be very sedentary and we sit too much. So just getting out of your chair, if you're able to, and moving your joints is going to give you great benefits no matter what your skill level is.
I practice yoga, and I always tell people when I would meet with them, I would just say, look, what I get out of yoga is not what you're going to get out of yoga. And so I think the importance really, Gia, I can't speak for you, but if you have a friend or a neighbor that does this, what they're getting out of it is not what you're going to get out of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and we usually say, because Pilates teachers, a lot of us are former dancers, and there tends to be a stereotype that we're perfectionists, which is kind of true. But usually we try to say it's about progress, not perfection. So if you feel progress, that's all that matters.
I like that a lot, actually, progress versus perfection. Can you show us an example of an exercise that anyone can do and what the benefits of it are?
Yeah, so you can do it seated in your chair if you want to follow along with me. That's great. It's for your hands, and it's actually great for helping arthritis or preventing arthritis and just keeping the dexterity of your hands, which is very important. One of my grandmothers, when she was older, she had horrible arthritis in her hands and she couldn't really grab onto things, especially with one of her hands where it was worse. So it's just important to keep the mobility in your hands. So you're going to hold your hands out like making a wide 5, as wide as you can, really stretch the in between each finger, and then trying to keep all the fingers straight. You're going to lower just your pinky. So that's the one I always struggle with. I cannot lower just the pinky without the other ones going down, and then bring the pinky up, and then you're going to do the ring finger, bring it up, and then the middle finger up, and then the index finger, bring it up, and then the thumb. And we're going to go a little faster. So you're going to do pinky and ring, middle finger, index finger, and thumb. One more time. Pinky, ring, middle, index finger, and thumb. Now you're going to kind of roll your hands. So you're going to bring your pinky, ring, middle, index into a fist, and then you're going to reverse, bringing it back out to that 5. So we go in to your fist, really roll the fingers, and then out. It doesn't seem like much, but it actually is working your hands. There's no muscles in your hands necessarily, but it keeps the tendons loose so that they don't get stiff. One more time. and then back out. And then you're just gonna roll your wrists around. This is great also if you work at the computer a lot, reverse your circle because it helps with carpal tunnel as well. And then you're gonna interlace your fingers, push your hands forward, straighten your arms, really stretch, and then bring it back. Interlace the other way that feels uncomfortable, and then same thing, push your hands forward, stretch your arms out, and then really push into your fingers. And then relax, shake it out. Now you're gonna bring your hands into a fist, squeeze it as tight as you can, and then think of throwing, like you're throwing like a little firework. You're gonna reach your arms out and throw your hands. And then pull it into a fist, into your shoulders, and then throw it out. And then one more time, pull in, and then throw out, and then shake it out. So you should feel a little bit of tingling, a little bit of blood flow in your hands. And again, it's just good to keep them active and to help prevent or slow down arthritis.
Are there any disadvantages to Pilates?
I don't really see any disadvantages. I'd say the only time that might be a disadvantage is if you had a teacher who wasn't necessarily qualified to work with the condition that you have, and they maybe did something that wasn't right for you, that can cause an injury. Or if you were working out at home online and you did something that you weren't ready for, that would be a disadvantage. But if you're working with the right teacher, I'd say it's only going to be positive. One tip I have is you might think that the first teacher you try is great, but it's always good to try different teachers, especially at the same studio, even just to kind of get a different point of view, because every teacher has their own style. And you may hear one cue from one teacher and it doesn't mean anything to you, but you hear the same cue a different way from someone else, and then a light bulb goes off and then you know what they're saying. So I think it's always good to try different teachers until you find one that's best for you.
Yeah, I imagine, Gia, the key when you're practicing, whether it's in the studio or at home, is really to listen to your body, right? You want to make
Yes.
sure you understand the difference. What is the difference between pain and just maybe discomfort? Is that something that people should understand?
Yeah, I see that a lot too, especially with stretching, because sometimes people have tight hamstrings, or there's a ligament on the side of your leg called the IT band,
Hmm.
and it can get very tight. So when people are stretching that, they think it's pain, but it's actually more discomfort. If it's like a shooting sensation and pain, I would say pull back and don't go any further, because that's usually your brain telling your body like that's not right. But if it's a little discomfort and it doesn't kind of travel around your body, it's just in that specific area that you're working, it's usually okay. Usually pain is a little bit more intense and it feels more like almost like a fire,
Hmm.
where um, discomfort can be a little bit more of a dull ache.
Is Pilates enough exercising that an individual needs, or should they be running? Should they be, lifting weights? I understand that you're using
Mhm.
your own weight a lot of times, but
Yeah.
what do you recommend?
For conditions like osteoporosis, weight is recommended. You do a little bit of weight bearing in Pilates, but it is really good to lift weights. So if someone's suffering from osteoporosis or osteopenia, I'd still recommend weightlifting. There isn't a ton of cardio in Pilates, so to keep your heart health, any kind of cardiovascular activity is recommended. Even just walking is great because it's a little bit easier on your joints than running. I usually recommend running over jogging, because jogging can be a little bit harder on your knees, just because of the slower pace. And then any kind of workout that you like is always recommended. Pilates is meant to make your other activities better. So if someone was looking to lose weight, you wouldn't do that with Pilates. You would still need some kind of cardio activity. But Pilates will kind of make you stronger so that you can do these other activities better.
Last question before we get to some of the questions from our guests today is
Mhm.
talking a little bit more about measuring success when it comes to Pilates. I think maybe for you, this is maybe something, I can't speak for you here, but I imagine some of the
Mhm.
importance of going to a studio is you maybe, if you're doing it at home, you maybe think you're doing it right, or you think, oh, I'm
Yeah.
good enough. I think maybe going to a studio and having, like you said, maybe a couple different instructors to kind of help you
Mhm.
understand where you're going the right direction, where you're doing wrong, are you doing it right, those type of things.
Yeah, it's always nice to have like because you have your initial assessment with the teacher, and I always find it helpful to do like kind of check-ins with like multiple assessments throughout your time doing Pilates, just to kind of see where you started and what's improved. You'll also notice, it's always one of my favorite things when I hear clients say, "Oh, I was able to walk up the stairs without any knee pain." Like certain things will happen where you may not notice it right away, but then you'll do something, you're like, oh, I was able to do that without pain, or that was much easier than it used to be. So that's where you see the progress, not necessarily in like in weightlifting. They usually have like, you know, if you've improved, if you can lift a heavier weight at a certain point, or they have those personal records, where we don't really do that in Pilates, but you notice it by how you're feeling.
Yeah. So a couple questions, Gia. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
This is excellent.
Oh, great.
First question, are there Pilates instructors that focus on beginners?
Yes, usually every Pilates instructor should be able to focus on beginners, because we were all beginners at one point too.
Hmm.
Usually to get a Pilates training, you have to have taken a certain number of Pilates classes before you can even start the training. So ideally, we'd all be able to focus on beginners, but I know some that focus on it more. You can kind of ask the studio that you're going to, or search online to find out who has a beginner specialty, but focusing on fundamentals, the alignment is always a great way to start with beginners.
Somebody else asked, how do you compare Pilates to Tai Chi or yoga?
I'm not as familiar with Tai Chi because I've never done it, but I know it's generally in standing more, where Pilates you're on your back more, and I believe there's circular movements in Tai Chi, where Pilates tends to be more linear.
Hmm.
But I have done a lot of yoga, and um, they're very similar. Joseph Pilates kind of drew from yoga a bit when he was creating Pilates, but so the breathing is different but similar. There is a mind-body connection in both, but I'd say the biggest difference is yoga has more of a spiritual component to it, because it has that history from India, and uh, it's just it's way older. It's thousands of years old, where Pilates is only like 100 or so years old. So there's a huge difference in that. And also, yoga tends to focus more on static poses, where Pilates focuses more on the flowing movement.
Okay. Somebody asked, if you're somebody looking to get started, do you recommend private lessons or going to group classes?
I would recommend a private class. Most studios require you to do at least 1 to 3 privates before you join a class, because especially if you are using the apparatus, because there's a lot of components to it. So during your privates, they're teaching you how to use the apparatus, how to change your springs, teaching the terminology. And if you're just thrown into a class, you may not understand what they're talking about. So I think privates are a great way to start. And that way you get to learn your body a little bit better too.
Yeah. Along the lines of that introduction with an instructor, somebody asked, how do I find a studio class that won't be so far ahead of me that I won't be able to fit in?
I think if you start with the privates, they can kind of catch you up, and then the teachers at that studio will be able to recommend a class that's right for you too. I know a lot of studios tend to have general classes, and when I've taught group classes, I always talk to everyone before I teach to make sure I know what level they're at, and then I kind of cater it to the people in that class. So that way it's not too advanced for someone who's just starting, but then the person who is advanced still gets a challenge as well. So you can kind of cater it around. And I like to do progressions where we start off doing one exercise, and then if you want more of a challenge, you can keep going. But if you know you're new and you want to work on the initial part first, you can keep going with that, and it's not going to be too repetitive.
Yeah. Somebody asked, is Pilates expensive?
It is expensive, but sometimes you can find deals on Groupon or stuff like that. But it, especially if you do privates, unfortunately, it is expensive. But that's because the teachers usually spend thousands of dollars on their education and then continue in education after that. It's usually about 450 hours minimum to become a Pilates teacher.
Yeah. Regarding the equipment, somebody asked if I wanted to start with online, can I just order some of the equipment online and then start with online classes?
You can. There. There are home versions of the reformer. I know there's one called the Aero Pilates. It uses bungee cords instead of springs, but I've used it before and it works pretty well. And then some of the main manufacturers also have smaller versions that you can kind of roll under the bed or fold up that you can use at home as well. But if you have a space for a full-size piece of apparatus, I've seen people do that too. It's a great option, and a lot of sites will have beginner series so that you can learn how to use everything correctly.
Very good. This is excellent stuff, Gia. How can people find you?
So I work for Pilates Anytime. So our website is www.pilatesanytime.com. That's PilatesAnytime.com. And you can find classes that I've taught on there or on their social media handles as well.
And I understand you guys have a large a website or a large online presence for online classes as
We
well.
do.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we are the leader in the Pilates industry. We have the biggest library of Pilates videos of all different ranges of duration and levels. The durations range from 10 minutes all the way to over an hour. A lot of Pilates teachers actually use the site to learn how to teach better as well. And we have our content broken up into different programs, so you can find specific area that you want to focus on or a specific population. Like we have an active aging program, and you can kind of follow the playlist along so that way you can keep your Pilates practice a habit.
Excellent. Well, thank you again today, Gia. This is
Thank you.
really good information. As far as knowledgeable aging, you can go to our website, knowledgeableaging.com. You can see all of our upcoming and archive webinars. I encourage you to go to YouTube, type in Knowledgeable Aging and subscribe. We try to update that a couple times per week. If podcasts are your thing, you can find us on Apple Tunes, Spotify, etc. Till next time, I'm your host, Jason Kotar, and this is Knowledgeable Aging.